All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Damilola. I am your English educator, and today we'll be taking English language. However, today we want to discuss a particular aspect in the English language. Preferably, I want to say that I want to discuss an important part when in the aspect of part of speech. Now, basically, the last class we had, we talked about the part of speech and we're able to discuss each of them, starting from the determinant all through the interjection. Now, but today we want to talk about one of them. As a matter of fact, the obligatory part of speech when it comes to English grammar. That particular part of speech we are talking about is the verb. The verb actually is the most important part of speech when it comes to English language, or basically English grammar. I might want to say that there is no expression that you make in the English language that is considered sensible or considered meaningful without the verb in it. Some school of thought will believe that the verb is the powerhouse of every expression that you make or every sentence that you give. If you remember in the past classes that we had, I said that it is impossible for you to make a complete sense, or it is impossible for you to make a complete sentence if your verb is not there. I'm not saying that you cannot write words. You can actually bring out words. But if there is no verb, preferably a finite verb in your expression, we may say that what you have written is a phrase. And the definition of a phrase may mean a combination or a group of words without a meaning in it, or a group of words brought together that carries no specific meaning, or we can say a statement made in abstract such that it has no meaning held to it. So, however, today we want to discuss verbs because, as I said earlier, it is the most important part of speech as the need arises. For us today, we need to explain what the verb is. We want to know what the verb is, how the verb is used, the types of verbs that we have. Basically, in the English language, there are two categories of verbs. But today, we'll be talking about one of these categories. By the time we proceed, we'll get to this category and then we'll have a cool time together to talk about this particular category we're talking about. Now, what are verbs? What are verbs? From the definition I have here, verbs are the action words. I want you to underline that they are what? Action words. Verbs are the action words in a sentence that describe what the subject is doing. I want us to underline that also, doing. Now, some school of thought will explain verb as a doing word. Some will say verbs are action or doing words. That is, if you have a sentence or you have an expression, it is the verb that will tell you what the subject has done or an action carried out by the subject, which in turn will be received by a concrete or an abstract object. Now, we said along with nouns, verbs are the main part of a sentence or phrase. Whatsoever, maybe we are telling a story about what's taking place. As a matter of fact, verb without a full thought, we cannot say that we have a sentence without a verb in it. As a matter of fact, a full thought will not be conveyed if the verb is not present in it. So I want us to put it to our mind today that anytime we are making a sentence and we know that our sentence carries a meaning, we should know that that sentence has a verb or multiple verbs in it, giving us the action done in that sentence or giving us a specific meaning of what the sentence is trying to express. Moving on from there quickly, we want to talk about the categories of verbs that we have. You know, at the beginning of this class, I told us that the verb is divided into two categories. Mainly, we have the auxiliaries, and then we have the main verbs, or what some school of thought will call the lexical verb. So today we want to discuss the auxiliary verbs. For the auxiliary verbs, we have two types. But before we go into the explanation of these two types, we want to know why we call them the auxiliaries. An auxiliary verb, also known as a helping verb, is a verb that helps another verb. It helps a main verb or a lexical verb to express its tense. I want you to underline that. Tense. Now, when we talk about tense, that is when we're talking about time in our expression. Tense will require or will mean that you're talking about past tense, that is things that have happened before, present tense, things that are happening now, and things that will happen later, that is the future tense. It is the verb that is found in this form. They are expressed in tenses. So when you have an auxiliary verb assisting another verb in a sentence, you call that verb and what? You call that verb an auxiliary verb. So now, an auxiliary verb also helps another verb in mood. It tells you what the speaker or the writer is trying to say, the kind of mood that is expressed in the sentence or expression. And the last one is the voice. This voice has to do with either in an active voice, in an active voice or a passive voice. Now, if it is in the active voice, it means the subject is directly acting on the verb given. But if it's in the passive, it means the object is acting, is directed to be referred as the one exemplifying what the verb has done, coming up with the subject. So moving up from there, we'll move into the types of auxiliary verbs that we have. The types of auxiliary verbs that we have. Now, the first one we have are the main auxiliary verbs. The main auxiliary verbs, they are three in number. We have to be, we have to have, and we have to do. Now, these main auxiliary verbs, they are so beautiful as we use them in English language because they are multitask, and we can say that they are multifunctional. You can use them as auxiliary verbs and you can use them as lexical verbs. But because today we want to talk about the auxiliary aspects and the functionality of these verbs, we will just remain on the side of these verbs functioning as auxiliaries. Now, for us to know how to be is used in sentences, I have tried in a way or two to bring out with pronouns, using them as conjugation to know how we exemplify to be in our sentences. Now, anytime you're using the first person singular I of the pronoun, the type of verb to be that you use with it is am. That is am. You say, I am doing this, I am going there, I am working this, I am saying this. Now, in the sentences that I've given, you realize that I am using am with another type of verb. Now, am there is supporting or assisting that other type of verb. The other type of verb used there is what we call our lexical verb. The auxiliary verb assisting the lexical verb, or what we call a main verb. Now, for you, the second person singular, you, we have are. So you can say you are doing this, you are saying this, you are going there. Now, for the third person singular, which we try as much as possible to know that we can differentiate them by gender, or one that has no gender, which we call the neutral or the neuter gender. So we can have he for masculine, she for feminine, and it for a neuter gender. So we can say is. So we say he is, she is, or it is. So we can say is, she is, or it is. So that is how you use your verb to be for the third person singular. And moving up from there, we can have the first person plural, that is we. The first person plural, that is we. So you use are there, you say we are, you say we are, and when it comes to you, you also say you are, and when you come to the third person plural, you say they are. So which means anytime you are using any of these pronouns, you know the form of the verb to be that you're using with them. Now, all of these verbs that I've mentioned earlier, that is the verb to be that I've mentioned earlier, they are all in the present tense. They are all in the present tense of the form of the verb to be. Now, if you're going to use the verb to be in its infinitive present continuous form, it is infinitive present continuous form, you have the being, the B-E-I-N-G, the being. It has the I-N-G suffix, so it is in the progressive or the continuous form. So you can use this anytime you want to use the verb be in present continuous form. You have a form that you can readily use there. And if you want to talk about the verb be in the past participle, in the perfected form of the verb, you have been, B-E-N. Now, the difference between the first one and the second one is that for the first B-E-I-N-G, you use that in a progressive form, in a continuous form. But the second one is in the perfected form, in a past perfected form, a present perfected form, or a future perfected form. So anytime you have any of these tenses and you want to express something in a perfected form, that is something that has been concluded, something that has been finished, an action that has taken place and we have forgotten about it, that is when you use the B-E-E-N. But if you're talking about something that is still in progress, something that is still going on, something that is still continuous, that is when you use the B-E-I-N-G. That is the pronoun conjugation for the verb to be. Now, moving on from there, we'll go to the verb to have. The verb to have. Don't forget, we said for the main auxiliaries, we have three verbs. We have the verb to be, which we have discussed earlier. We have the verb to have, which I am going to discuss now. And we have the verb to be, which we will discuss later in this class. So for the verb to be, for the pronoun conjugation, we have I have for the first person singular, you have you have for the second person singular, and we have he or she or it for the third person singular, and the form of the verb will be has. So you say I have, you have, he has, she has, or it has. It will be wrong for you to say he have, no, or you say she have, no, or you say it have, no. In the present tense, it is wrong for you to use it that way. So the form of that verb will be has. So you say he has, she has, or it has. And when we move to the plural aspect of this pronoun, we have we have, we have you have, and we have they have. So when you proceed from there and you want to go to the progressive form, just as we have for the verb to be, we have the having. That is the having, that is H-A-V-I-N-G, having, H-A-V-I-N-G, having. So, but when you want to talk about this verb in the perfected form, that is had. So you can say I had in the past perfected form, you had, she had, we had, you had, and they had. So this will tell you that when you're using that verb with another verb, with a lexical verb, you're talking about a perfected job, a finished job, a settled job. So that is that for the verb to have. Moving on to the verb to do. This is the third and the concluding one of the main auxiliary verbs. The third and the concluding one of the main auxiliary verb. And for the pronoun conjugation, we have I do for the first person, you do for the second person, and he or she or it does. You see the differences. Now for verb to be, you see that when we go to the third person singular, the form of the verb changed. The form of the verb changed. And we want to, when we go to have to, the form of the verb changed from have to has. And now when we have gotten to verb to do now, it changes to what? To does. So we can now proceed further saying for the plural, we have we do, you we have you do, and they we have they do. And we want to talk about the progressive form of this verb to do. We are doing, D-O-I-N-G, doing. So you can say, you can use this in the progressive form. In the progressive form, it depends on the kind of expression you're trying to give or what you're trying to say as the matter entails or as it requires. And when we want to talk about this verb in the perfected form of it, of its functionality. That is when you use done, D-O-N-E, done, done. So don't forget that for the verb to be, don't forget, let us just have a run through. We have I am, you have you are, we have he or she or it is. Don't forget that part. The third person singular or the pronoun has a way that it changes the form of verb that it has with it when we are talking about the auxiliaries. So now it has changed from be to is. And then we have we are for the plural, you are, they are, and just as we have them. And for the progressive, we have the being in the progressive. And for the perfected form, we have the being. And proceeding to have, as I have said earlier, we have I have, you have, he or she or it has. He or she or it has. Then we have, you have, and then we have they are. In the progressive form, we have having, H-A-V-I-N-G, and in the perfected form, we have had, H-A-D. Moving on to do, once again, I said we have I do, you do, he or she or it does. So it will be wrong for you to say he do. It will be wrong for you to say she do, or it will be wrong for you to say it do. So the correct form is he does, she does, or it does. And we'll move forward on the plural form. We have we do, you do, and they do. And in the progressive form of that, we have doing, we have, and in the perfected form, we have done. Moving on from there, the second part or the second type of the auxiliary verb is the modal auxiliary. The modal auxiliary are so perfect in their use such that they have a mode of operation. I may want to tell you that these modal auxiliary verbs cannot be used alone in a sentence. So they must go alongside a lexical verb. They must go alongside another verb. As a matter of fact, you trying to use them alone in a sentence, you realize that you will not form a correct sentence. Now, by the time we get into the types of the modal auxiliaries and we try to make one or two sentences, you realize that you can only use the modal auxiliaries with another type of verb or the lexical verb, so to say. So these modal auxiliary verbs, they have a modus operandi. There is a way you use them. They have a way, they have their own specific meaning, and this meaning affects the meaning of the lexical verb you are using with them. We said they come in combination with ordinary verbs. A modal verb changes the other verb's meaning to something different from simple fact. Modals may express permission, ability, prediction, possibility, or necessity. So as I said earlier, I said these verbs, they have a way of changing the meaning of the verb they are working with. It is just like saying that they have a way to orchestrate a change in the meaning of the lexical verb that we are bringing towards them such that they can assist. Now, if we move up from there, we have the principal modal verbs. We have can. Now, some school of thought will tell you that we have can and could, may and might. But for this class, I may want to say that I have tried to differentiate them based on tenses. Can is used in the present tense, could is used in the past tense, may is used in the present tense, might is used in the past tense, shall is used in the present tense, should is used in the past tense, will is used in the present tense, would is used in the past tense. The other ones that may not really have the way we change them to past tense, it basically will not affect them, but it will affect the lexical verb beside them. That is must. You cannot say musted, you can only use must. Ought, you cannot say oughted, you can only use ought. But for dare and need, we can have them in the past tense. You can say I dared him to do something, or you can say needed to. So the last two may not really conform with the change or the inflectional or restriction that must and ought have. What I'm saying is that as we can change can to could in the past tense, may to might in the past tense, shall to should in the past tense, will to would in the past tense. Dare and need also, they can change to past tense. But must and ought, they are the exceptions that we have that they don't change by tense. They only remain the way they are. But that inflection is considered on the lexical verb they are working with. Pardon me. Now, moving on from there. Now, we said the modal verbs are different from ordinary verbs in several ways. The modal verbs are different from ordinary verbs in several ways. One of these ways is that they have no inflection. Now, anytime we are talking about inflection, we can have tense inflection and number inflection. If we talk about tense inflection, that is when you talk about changing a part of speech, specifically the verb, from present tense to past tense or to future tense. So now, we can also change it from a simple present tense, simple past tense, simple future tense to a continuous form. Now, if I want to change a particular verb from present tense to past tense, the understanding is that I have to add ed to it, irrespective of the result that I'm getting. If, for instance, now I want to convert by to a past tense, to its past tense form, grammatically, what I am doing is that I am adding ed to buy. Though I will not come out to say that I buyed the book, I would rather say I bought the book. But what we are saying is that for me to change the verb buy to past tense, I have added the inflection, a suffix inflection, ed to it, that I've changed it from buy to bought. The word buy is an example of an irregular verb. Verbs that by the time you try to convert them to a past tense, they change their spelling. Another one is when you have catch. The past tense of catch is not catched, it is caught. So those are the examples of irregular verbs. But for your regular verbs, you can have book, to book someone, or maybe you book something, maybe you're booking a flight, you can add ed to it, you can say you booked it, you booked it. If you use the word flog, the past tense of flog is flogged. The past tense of flog is flogged. You have added ed to it. So basically what we are saying is that for the modal auxiliary verbs, they don't take these inflections, and you cannot change them into singular or plural, just as you can do to other verbs. You know, one of the rules of Concord states that there must be verb and subject conjugation. There must be verb and subject agreement. That is, if you are using a singular verb, you use a plural verb. So if you say Saturday, now the kind of verb you are using with it must be singular verb, because Saturday is one, singular. The verb you're using with it must be a singular verb. But if I say Saturday and tire, I have two there. The verb I'll be using there will be plural. So if I have said Saturday, I may say Saturday sweeps the floor. Saturday sweeps the floor. Now the verb used there is a singular verb. But if I say Saturday and tire sweep the floor, Saturday and tire sweep the floor. Now there are differences that you have to notice there. For the singular verbs, they carry S. For the plural verbs, they don't carry S. Unlike your nouns, where your plurals will carry S or ES, and then your singular will not carry the S. But for the verbs, the other way around happens to them. The singular verbs will carry S, and the plural verbs will not carry an S. So you will say, Saturday sweeps the floor, but Saturday and tire sweep the floor. So I want you to pay attention to those. Now, but when we're talking about the modal auxiliary, going back to where we digress from, we're saying that these modal auxiliaries, they don't take inflections, either by tense or by number. So you cannot add inflections to them, suffix inflections, saying that you want to change them to either past tense or future tense. No, they only remain the way they are. And you cannot say that they must conform with the Concord rule that says that they must conform with this number of subject that you have. Rather, that inflection happens to the lexical verb that you are using with them, or the verb they are assisting. Another thing that I want you to note about the ways that they are different from other ones is that the infinitive form have to come with the other ones. That is, a modal verb is always followed by the infinitive form of the verb they are working with. The infinitive form, pardon me, of the verb they are working with. So which means when you are using a modal verb, the lexical verb that you are using must come in the infinitive form. That is, you are adding the preposition to that lexical verb. So, for instance, if I am using the verb will, if I am using the verb will with a lexical verb, it will come in the infinitive form. It may be in the bare infinitive or in the toe infinitive. So I can say will be, I can say will do, I can say will have, I can say will go, I can say will sing, I can say will sweep, I can say will run, I can say must run, I can say can run. Now, so the way you use them with in the infinitive form of the verb you are working with. Infinitive form of the verb you are working with. Now, by the time you want to change maybe those verbs you have used in your sentence to past tense, you realize that it is only your modal auxiliary verb that will be affected. So you cannot say, I could run. It is impossible. It is ungrammatical. Rather, you say what? I could run. Now, because you could not change that run from its present form into the past form, it is telling you that that particular verb is in the infinitive form. You cannot change it. You cannot change it. It remains like that all through your sentence. So if you're going to change from one tense to another, it is your modal auxiliary verb that will be affected. It is your modal auxiliary verb that will change in tense. But remember, I said at the beginning of this class that you cannot use your modal auxiliary verbs alone in a sentence. You must use them with another verb, or you must use them assisting a lexical verb. So you cannot say, I can the book, I can the road, but you can say, I can read the book, I can walk on the road. Now, you realize that when I was trying to use the modal auxiliaries alone, when I was using can, the modal auxiliary can alone, I could not form a sensible or a complete sentence. But when I added a lexical verb to it, I was able to express myself correctly in English language. So put that to mind that anytime you're using the modal auxiliaries, you cannot use them alone in a sentence, unlike the main auxiliaries, where you can use them as auxiliary verbs and you can use them as lexical verbs. So it is possible for me to say, I have a book. I have a book. And it is possible to say that I have been running since. Now, the first sentence that I made, I have a book, I have used have there as a lexical verb. But the second one, I have used it as an auxiliary verb. I have been running. The major verb or the lexical verb in the second sentence is running. Is running. The lexical verb there is running. So that is how you use your modal auxiliaries. So let me show you some of the examples of the modal auxiliary verbs that we have. These are the examples. Now, I said earlier, I said they have a way that they affect the lexical verbs that are used with them. And I told you that each of these modal auxiliaries, they have their own meaning. There is a way you use them. They have the modus operandi of how you make use of them every time you put them in an expression or you use them in a sentence. For instance, can. Anytime you are using the verb, the modal verb can, it means you're trying to talk about an ability. For instance, in our example, if I say, I can speak Spanish, I can speak Spanish, it means I have the ability to speak Spanish. I have the ability to speak Spanish. And you can also use it to request permission. I can also use it to request permission. I can say, can I go to the bathroom? Can I go to the bathroom? Now, I am using that verb there to request permission. Now, I may also use it for probability, to show probability or state of probability. I can say, it can't be Mark, is in London. Now, what I'm saying is that there is a probability that Mark is not the one that might have been there, or maybe what we are talking about, Mark may not have been the person we are talking about because of what? Of the probability that Mark is not around. So look at the completion of the sentence. He said, it can't be Mark. That is, why can't it be Mark? Because Mark is what? It's far away. So it's telling us of the probability that it may be Mark or it may not be So it's showing a case of what? Probability, probable situation. So don't forget, for can, you can use it to talk about ability, you can use it in requesting permission, or you can use it to talk about probability. And the past tense of it, could, you can see we have past ability, past permission, or probability. You can also use it to make request, as we have said earlier. Now, the second one quickly that I want to talk about is may. Just as can, you can also use this for probability. It may snow tomorrow. It may snow tomorrow. That is, there is a probability that the snow will fall tomorrow. It is a probability that we are going to experience snow tomorrow. So if you use may in a sentence, you are trying to talk about a probability of something that may happen. You may also use it to request permission, just like can. May I come in? So if you want to go into a room, you can say, may I come in? Or you can say, can I come in? So you can use both verbs, vis-a-vis. Now, the past tense of it is might. The past tense of may is might. So you can use may in the present tense and you use might in the past tense. So you can see that for may, you use it for probability, and might, you're using it for what? Probability too. Now, for must, you use it for prohibition. That is, you use it for stopping something or someone from doing something. Or you want to use that thing for command. You can also use must for command. So you can say you mustn't speak loud here. That is, you must not speak loud here. And if you want to put that as a command on someone, you can say you must do this. You must do this. So it means there is a compulsory notion on that person. There's a compulsory motive on what you're saying on the person. That is, there's compulsion on the person that that action must be carried out. So when you're using it for negative statement, you say you mustn't speak loud here. That's an example. And if you must use it for a positive, it comes with a command. You must speak loud here. So, and if you want to use it on probability, yes, it's quite dark. It must be after 8 o'clock. So now this person here is talking about the probability of what time, but there's a notion of certainty when we have it there. Now you can see that we are talking about the probability of 100%. So there is a notion of probability, there's a notion of certainty, pardon me, there's a notion of certainty on that as used in that sentence. So it is quite dark. So definitely, if it is quite dark, it means we must be around 8 o'clock or some minutes or some hours after 8 o'clock. So that is what must is doing there. Now when we go to should gives us advice. Should gives us advice and said, you shouldn't smoke, it is unhealthy. Now, you shouldn't smoke, it is unhealthy. So when you're using should, you use it to pass, to give someone advice. Use it to give someone advice. And the last one I want to discuss today will be will. Will, for this, we have it when we talk about prediction, when I think it will study at this time. Now, you are predicting what the person would do. You are predicting how the person will respond to that thing. And secondly, you use will to talk about spontaneous decision, immediate decision, reflexive decision. It is very hot today, I will open the window. That is, the person is doing that thing as the person was talking about it, the situation there. As the person was expressing that situation, the person was carrying out that action, spontaneous decision. So don't forget, let me do a recap because of our time. I have told us that the modal auxiliaries, you cannot use them alone in a sentence, but you must always use them with a lexical verb in the same sentence with them so that they can assist that lexical verb. And as I said earlier, I said these modal auxiliaries, they change the meaning of the lexical verb we are having with them because they carry their own meaning. Can is used to express ability, permission, and probability. Could is used to express past ability, past permission, past probability, and request. May is used to express probability of about 50%, or you use it for requesting permission. Might also for probability. Must for prohibition, that is to stop somebody from doing something or stop something from happening. Or you can use it for command, that is when you're using it in the positive, you put it, it comes with a command tone. You must do this. It comes with a command tone. And then when you want to talk about a probability with a notion of certainty, you use must. Should is used to give advice, and will, which is the last one, is used to predict something or to express a spontaneous decision. So this is where we'll stop for today. My assignment for you is that for each of the verbs that I've explained today, you form a sentence with each of them. By the time you make use of this in your day-to-day sentences, your day-to-day expression, you grow more in English language. And don't forget, the more you express yourself, the more you get better in English language. So don't forget to express yourself. At the beginning of it, it may seem that you're making mistakes, but do not relent. Make more mistakes, and as you make the mistakes, you get better by reading through, by checking through, by doing more researches on what you have learned. And by the time you use them in your day-to-day conversation and your day-to-day business activities, you realize that you get better. And this will transcend into your writing, such that by the time you are asked to write any essay or article or whatsoever type of write-up you are given, you realize that you are getting better in the way you use your verbs. Don't forget, the verb is the action word or a doing word. The verb is the powerhouse of any expression that you are given in English language. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.